was about a week before he died. It was at the Villa Capri. I remember he was telling me he was going to go to a race soon, and he would call me, and then I didn't hear from him. Of course.
We hugged and we kissed, and I walked down, and he was there, and it, like Humphrey Bogart and what's her name, with the mist and the whole thing and the airplanes, and Rick and Elsa or whatever they were, whoever they were. And it was very dramatic and really kind of wonderful.
He's not going to live very long, It was just a certainty that I should probably die before I'm 25. And he said it with such serenity. There wasn't any fear, there wasn't any alarm. It was almost like saying, I'm saying goodbye to you now because I won't be able to say goodbye to you then.
Before he left on his final journey, James Dean had one last thing to take care of. In a nearby diner, he met his father, Wynton, and they lunched over coffee and donuts. Jimmy was desperate for him to come and see the race, but his father refused. He had rejected his son for the final time.
Your son, Aaron, he's everything that's good.
Say hello to your mother, Aaron.
Say hello to your mother!
Jimmy had had a troubled relationship with his father ever since he'd abandoned him at age 9, shortly after his mother had died of cancer.
The father sent the mother in a coffin from California into the Midwest, where she was buried, and he also sent Jimmy with her. And so he lost his mother and his father. Horror. It's a horror. Can you imagine leaving a 9-year-old boy alone with the love of his life and nobody there with him in terms of parents? It was a cruel kind of thing that really almost was a way of trying to murder him.
So, rejected by his father, Jimmy was raised by his aunt and uncle in Fairmont, Indiana. Back at the garage, Jimmy and his mechanic made last-minute checks. As a racing safety precaution, they fitted a seatbelt to the driver's side, although the coroner noted that Dean was not wearing a seatbelt when he crashed. The plan was to load the car onto a trailer and tow it north to Salinas. At some point in the final preparations, though, someone changed the plan and decided to drive the Porsche to the race. Maybe it was Jimmy, anxious to get behind the wheel. Whoever it was, it proved to be a fatal decision.
We had the car loaded. We filled up the tank on the little wagon that was towing him. And the mechanic was with him, and Rolf, and up and said, I want to drive the car up there. And I said, come on, Jimmy, that's 350 miles. You don't want to drive up there. You want to save the car for the race. No, I want to take it off. So we took the car off. And he said, who is going to go with me? And of course, Rolf put up his hand. I'll go with you. Let's go.
At 2 o'clock on that Friday afternoon, James Dean started off on what would become his final drive. Heading north out of Los Angeles, he chose what he thought would be a safer route for his precious Porsche. He'd become familiar with the highways around Los Angeles since moving there from his home in Fairmont. Jimmy had grown up an Indiana farm boy, cared for by his Aunt Hortense and Uncle Marcus, a boy with a passion for motorbikes and acting. It was in June 1949 that 18-year-old Jimmy left home to live with his dental technician father in Los Angeles, where he enrolled in the drama department at UCLA.
I met James Dean at UCLA. We were both in the theater arts department. He was a new student and didn't know anyone on campus. He was appearing in Macbeth, and I was working on the production crew of Macbeth, and he was cast as Malcolm. and he was terrible. He couldn't have been worse, and I found myself in the position of sitting in the dark house during the rehearsals, whispering to my co-workers, "Who's the Indiana hick with the terrible accent?"
By 2:30, Jimmy cleared the worst of the LA traffic. Passenger Rolf Wertherick was kept busy lighting endless cigarettes as Jimmy chain-smoked his way into Kern County, happy to leave the pressures of his career far behind. In 1951, Jimmy moved to New York to try his hand on Broadway. There he attended Lee Strasberg's famous Actors Studio, home of method acting. Soon, he was being cast in bigger and better stage roles, due partly to his relationship with theater director Rogers Brackett, a father figure who had a profound influence on his life. It wasn't until Brackett's death and the publication of his memoirs that details of their homosexual affair went public.
I think Rogers Brackett was a kind of a mentor, and took Jimmy under his wing, and it was kind of heady for him, you know. Then he became, I think, more demanding of his time and of his person, and it made Jimmy very uncomfortable and very unhappy.
I didn't know in which way he knew him. I didn't know that until after he died, because I didn't investigate.
When he, using his word, succumbed to him on the train going to Chicago, it bothered him so much that he left Chicago without Rogers and flew to New York.
Jimmy was a victim of what is known in Hollywood as the casting couch, selling his body to get work. But the sexual nature of the revelations in Rogers Brackett's memoirs left many of Jimmy's friends with their illusions shattered.
And it was really only years later that I was told that the relationship had been a sexual one. The part that hurt was feeling that he might have gone along with these relationships for the material and benefits that they would provide. That was crushing. If you're using your sexuality in order to advance your career, that somehow has a very tainted and tawdry aspect that I didn't want to think of him as that.